When my dad married a woman half his age 6 months after my mother passed, everyone thought she was after his modest estate. They had no idea she was hunting a much bigger prize. What she didn't know was that my late grandfather had bypassed my father entirely, leaving me a secret $30 million trust fund. I kept my mouth shut, living like an average middle-class woman while she slowly drained my father's bank accounts dry. But the moment my dad passed away, her sweet act evaporated. She showed up at my front door with a ruthless, high-powered attorney, demanding I hand over my father's hidden fortune or face immediate financial ruin. They thought they were ambushing an unsuspecting, naive daughter. But as her lawyer unsealed his aggressive court order, I handed him a single document that turned his face ghost white. My name is Sophie Carter. I'm 42 years old, and if you saw me in line at the grocery store, you wouldn't look twice. I work as a museum curator, drive a 10-year-old sedan, and live in a quiet, modest neighborhood. But beneath that ordinary surface lies a secret I've guarded for over a decade. When my grandfather passed away, he left behind a massive $30 million fortune. But knowing my father's history with reckless spending and terrible business ventures, my grandfather bypassed him completely. He placed every single penny into an irrevocable trust directly in my name, with one strict warning: keep it hidden until I truly needed it. For years, that was easy. But then came Evelyn. Evelyn was a slick, 32-year-old social climber who swept into my father's life barely 6 months after my mother died. She wore designer clothes, spoke in a honeyed, persuasive voice, and treated my dad like a king, as long as his wallet was open. I saw right through her from day one. She wasn't in love. She was hunting for a jackpot. My instincts told me to keep my mouth shut about the trust. So, while Evelyn assumed I was just a broke, struggling daughter, I watched silently from the sidelines as she began her move. Over the next 5 years, I had a front-row seat to Evelyn's masterclass in slow-motion manipulation. She was patient, I'll give her that. Step by step, she isolated my father from his lifelong friends, convincing him that everyone around him was just jealous of his newfound happiness. She persuaded him to liquidate his long-term investments, upgrade to a sprawling mansion, and lease luxury sports cars. Eventually, she convinced him to put every major property and bank account into her name, claiming it was for easier management as he grew older. Through it all, I played the part of the meek, broke daughter perfectly. I stayed in my small one-bedroom apartment. When Evelyn condescendingly offered to pay for my dinner or handed me a $50 gift card for my birthday with that fake, pitying smile, I accepted it gracefully. She genuinely believed I was living paycheck to paycheck, entirely dependent on whatever crumbs she allowed my father to throw my way. She felt completely in control, totally unaware that the true family wealth was entirely beyond her reach. Then, the inevitable happened. My father's heart gave out, and he passed away suddenly. At the funeral, Evelyn put on a dramatic show of grief in front of the guests, dabbing away non-existent tears with a lace handkerchief. But the moment the last mourner left, her tearful expression vanished like smoke. In the car on the way back, she didn't talk about my father's memory or how much she'd miss him. Instead, her eyes narrowed as she brought up offshore accounts, safe deposit boxes, and whatever else my grandfather might have left behind. The grieving widow act was over. The hunt for the money had officially begun. Just 3 days after the funeral, the front door of my modest apartment rattled with an aggressive, impatient knock. When I opened it, there stood Evelyn. But she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was Richard Vance, a high-powered probate attorney known in the city for his ruthless tactics and astronomical fees. Evelyn didn't even bother to ask how I was doing. She shoved her way past me into my small living room, her heels clicking loudly against the hardwood, while Vance followed with a thick leather briefcase held like a weapon. "We don't have time for pleasantries, Sophie," Evelyn snapped, crossing her arms over her designer coat. Vance stepped forward and handed me a thick demand letter wrapped in official legal seals. He explained in a cold, practiced voice that they were officially serving me with a legal notice. They claimed to have discovered irregularities in my father's financial records. According to their theory, my dad had secretly funneled tens of millions of dollars of family money directly to me over the last decade to keep it out of Evelyn's hands. "We know your grandfather left a massive fortune, Sophie," Evelyn sneered, a triumphant grin spreading across her face. "Your father tried to hide it in your name, but it belongs to his estate, which means it belongs to me." Vance chimed in, leaning forward with an intimidating glare. He gave me an ultimatum. I had exactly 48 hours to surrender full access to all hidden family trusts and hand over every asset, or they would file a devastating lawsuit against me. They promised to freeze my bank accounts, drag me through public court, and sue me into complete financial ruin. They thought they had backed a desperate, broke daughter into a corner. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. In fact, I did something that made Evelyn's smug grin falter instantly. I smiled, walked into the kitchen, and calmly poured 3 glasses of iced tea. "Please, sit down," I said softly, setting the tray on the coffee table. "You've had a long drive, and I imagine reading legal documents is thirsty work." Evelyn looked furious at my composure, while Richard Vance narrowed his eyes, clearly sensing that something wasn't adding up. Instead of panicking or pleading for mercy, I walked over to my desk, unlocked a small wooden lockbox, and pulled out a single, pristine folder. I handed it directly to Vance. "Since you're so concerned with my grandfather's estate, Mr. Vance, I suggest you read page 3. Vance scoffed, taking the folder with an air of arrogant superiority. But as his eyes scanned the official notary stamps and the clear, unambiguous legal language, his posture completely shifted. The document wasn't a transfer of funds from my father. It was an irrevocable living trust executed by my grandfather over 15 years ago, long before Evelyn had even met my dad. The legal terms were airtight. Every dollar of the $30 million fortune was transferred directly from my grandfather to me. My father never owned it, never controlled it, and had zero legal right to touch it, which meant it was never part of his estate, and Evelyn didn't have a claim to a single dime. As the reality set in, Vance's face turned ghost white. He looked up at Evelyn, then back at the papers, completely speechless. "Is there a problem, Mr. Vance?" I asked, taking a slow sip of my tea. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the legal seals, realizing he'd walked straight into a trap. But what Evelyn didn't realize was that the trap was about to spring shut on her too. You see, my grandfather wasn't just wealthy. He was intensely cautious. Knowing how ruthless financial predators could be, he had placed a strict fraud prevention clause on our family's assets. Any attempt by an outside party to fraudulently claim or leverage his estate would trigger immediate legal protection measures. And that was Evelyn's fatal mistake. Over the past 3 years, assuming she would eventually get her hands on the $30 million, Evelyn had taken out massive personal loans and credit lines. She'd used my father's properties as collateral, promising lenders that a massive inheritance payout was imminent to secure lower rates. But now, with the $30 million officially out of reach, those bank loans were instantly defaulted. The debts didn't belong to the estate. They belonged entirely to her. Vance slowly closed the folder, his professional composure completely shattered. He turned to Evelyn, his tone dropping from arrogant to sharp and venomous. "You told me the father controlled these funds. You assured me this was an illegal transfer." I thought it was," Evelyn stammered, her face flushed with sudden panic. "Richard, do something. We can contest it." "Contest what?" Vance snapped, standing up so fast his chair nearly tipped over. "This is an irrevocable trust created 15 years ago. It's unassailable." He packed his briefcase in seconds, refusing to look Evelyn in the eye. "My firm is withdrawing from this representation immediately, and Ms. Carter, expect my bill in the mail." Before Evelyn could even protest, her high-powered lawyer turned on his heel and walked out the front door, leaving her completely alone. With her lawyer gone, the silence in my apartment was deafening. Evelyn sat frozen on the sofa, staring at me as the full weight of her reality set in. She wasn't just walking away empty-handed, she was walking straight into a financial nightmare. Without the non-existent $30 million payout to cover her tracks, the creditors didn't waste any time. Within weeks, the banks moved in on her inflated lifestyle. The luxury sports cars were repossessed, the designer accounts were frozen, and the sprawling mansion she had coaxed my father into buying was put up for public auction to satisfy her massive loan defaults. She tried reaching out to me twice, sending desperate texts begging for a family settlement or a loan to clear her legal fees. I didn't even bother replying. Greed had driven every single choice she made, and now she was simply reaping the consequences. She was forced to sell off every piece of jewelry and high-end fashion she owned just to pay off her legal bills and avoid total bankruptcy, ending up with nothing to show for her 5 years of ruthless scheme. As for me, I finally decided to put a small portion of my grandfather's trust to use. When my father's original modest home, the place where I grew up and where my mother's memories lived, went up for foreclosure auction due to Evelyn's debts, I bought it back cash. I spent the next month restoring the house, stripping away the tacky, expensive modifications Evelyn had forced upon it, and bringing back the warmth it once had. I didn't need to live in a mansion or show off my wealth to feel whole. Protecting my family's true legacy was the only victory I ever wanted. Looking back, staying quiet was the hardest part, but it was also the smartest decision I ever made. Silence protected me when anger would have only created chaos. If I had bragged about the money or confronted Evelyn early on, she would have simply changed her tactics and found another way to tear my family apart. Instead, by letting her believe she was the smartest person in the room, her own arrogance became her ultimate undoing. Greed has a funny way of blinding people. It makes them so focused on the prize that they never look down to see the trap they're digging for themselves. My grandfather's wisdom didn't just save my inheritance, it preserved my peace of mind and honored the values my mother and grandfather raised me with. Now, I'm curious about what you think. If you were in my shoes, would you have kept the $30 million a secret to protect yourself? Or would you have told your dad the truth right from the beginning? Comment below with your thoughts and let me know the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.